Welcome to M&A Diaries. On this particular episode, I sit down with John Holliday, Managing Director and owner of Potnells. John shares with us all of his experiences, lessons learned, and success stories from post-integration after acquisition. He covers matters from branding, marketing, communication, client retention, staff retention, and making sure that cultural alignment is there from the very early stages.
Well, hi, John. Thanks for joining us today on this The Firm podcast. I wanted to bring you on today because I think a lot of people, when talking about M&A, always talk about acquisitions and looking at it pre-completion. So getting the deal done, what things you'll be looking at from there. But no one really talks about once the deal's done, what happens post-completion, integration-wise, both from team point of view, systems point of view, branding point of view, and other areas as well. So you've made a few acquisitions, and I'll ask you just to give a little bit of background on yourself and Potnells in a second. But you've had that experience of integrating firms post-acquisition, and really want to get your insight and real-time insights into that, and sharing some of the challenges that you've experienced along the way as well. So yeah, it'd be great for you to open up just quickly on yourself, so the viewers at home know who you are and what Potnells is all about.
Perfect. Yeah, so my name's John. I own Potnells. I've got various companies, mainly because we keep acquiring other firms and we're doing other adventures, I guess you'd say, along the lines. But it all started for me as an apprentice at Seagrave and Potnells, which is what it formerly was, and I sort of qualified and then got offered an opportunity to become a partner. And at that point for me, I was quite made up to be offered a partnership opportunity. But actually the firm that I was buying, I didn't do any due diligence on. I was just sort of chuffed to be offered an opportunity and jumped in with 2 feet. And I never realised that if you couldn't pay wages as an employee, when you weren't getting your wages paid on time, that it probably meant there were problems financially with that business. Didn't work that out. So I just jumped in and became a partner, which was brilliant. And then I think I was quite excited and buying everyone's sort of beers down the pub, and then realised when the firm was up that the partner said to me, "Oh, can we put some money back in because we haven't got the money to pay the wages?" I think that was when it realised to me that maybe I hadn't bought the best business, and that was my first stepping stone onto acquisitions, I guess. And from there, it's sort of carried on and improved, I hope. So that's sort
And
of.
how many acquisitions are you now?
So I think that the first one, so after that, I carried on. Obviously, I think I bought 15% of the company to start with. And then there was a meeting at some point where I said to my business partner, who was a really good guy, to be fair, really honest bloke, just the business. I said to him, "I think you've got to let me run this, or I've got to come away from this because this isn't going to carry on." So he sold me a lot more of the business. I think we were 50-50 then. And at that point, we went on to buying other firms and looking at acquisitions.
Yeah.
So the first acquisition we ever did was because unfortunately someone passed away. That was a disaster. So the accountant passed away and we were is it called notary? I can't remember what you call it, but we were effectively the person who had to pick up the book. And that one was probably the worst one we've ever done. We've still got some of the clients now, but it was an awful, again, learned a lot from that on how not to do it, I would say.
It sounds like the first two in your journey, you've learned a hell of a lot from.
Learned a lot, yeah. So the second one was bad because I never realised that how much you need. Well, one, the person who did the work was no longer around, so you couldn't even ask questions on the working papers or anything, which is obviously one of the key things in any acquisition, is having team there to help you understand what's gone on. So that was a problem. The other thing was that the people who were around were obviously grieving, and that also isn't great at all for the experience. So very, very tricky. And the clients were obviously upset, but also needed to get things done. So that was a really strenuous time. I remember that. I think since then we've had a lot more success. So since then we've done 2, 3, 4 more acquisitions since then. And obviously I've got a couple hopefully in the pipeline. And we've always done relatively small acquisitions. So pretty much all of our acquisitions have probably been sort of 200,000 blocks of fees, I would say.
Yeah.
Obviously, one we're looking at doing now is a lot more. And I think going forward, they will be bigger acquisitions that we're looking to do just because of where our business has now got to. So yeah, when I bought in, there were 4 of us in the team. Currently, I think there's 42 of us in the team at the minute. Hopefully.
Fantastic growth. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic
So,
growth. And I think
um,
you've kind of, just as you was talking there, give us a bit of background, you've highlighted a few of the key areas already as to why that post-integration or post-completion process is so important, to make sure that all the hard work you've done pre-completion is actually the investment that you needed to make, and you kind of get the value that you was looking for. When you are looking at an acquisition from that point of view, and you've learned a lot obviously from the first two you mentioned there, when you're thinking from a post-integration point of view, what is it when you're considering acquisition opportunity? What are the key areas that you're looking at, and I guess why as well?
so I think obviously one of them is going to be profit. Is there money in it? Is there money in it to service the debt? Is there money in it? Is there growth opportunities? Because if there's no growth opportunities, I don't personally see the opportunity in it. That's something I would say. Or is there another strategic decision to buy it? So one of the ones that we recently purchased was because it was in the same town as one of our current offices, and we wanted it because we're probably going to renovate our office or change our office. Again, it's a strategic decision to buy that one rather than
Hmm.
necessarily it's stacked up for monetary reasons. But what do we look for? I guess obviously profit, obviously growth, but also what team has it got? So if it's got a team in there that's got skills that we haven't got, maybe that would be one of the things we would look at. We'd also look at if how we get on with the existing partners. So if the existing partners are hanging around, it would very much be a gut feel for how we all get on, and if our goals are aligned as well, because I feel like if our goals aren't aligned, at some point you are going to have problems. So I think
Hugely. I mean, I think that's one thing when people are looking at acquisitions, they don't realise they probably get too indulged in the numbers, and actually you need to be looking at the intangibles as such, and like the human element, because as you said, for that post integration and that acquisition to be successful, you need to be able to work with those people going forward, and that means the team as well, not just the partners or the directors that are outgoing.
so. I think yeah, I mean, definitely that is 100% the most important part. I think in any deal, because I think we've bought firms in the past where necessarily people aren't hanging around. They're not staying very long. And I think in those deals, that isn't as important, especially if it's just a block of fees. But I think where you're bringing people in, it'd be very tricky for a very sleepy firm to come and work with us because it wouldn't work. They wouldn't enjoy it. We wouldn't work well with them. And there would
Yeah.
probably be clashes along the way, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So how do you evaluate that when you're first in deal mode and you've just been introduced to them and you're going through the process? How do you evaluate the cultural alignment and fit from the firm? What kind of tactics do you play, or do you just is it just a case of trying to get as many meetings and conversations in with them as much as possible?
I think lots of meetings is important. I think being honest, I think sometimes no one plays the first card in a deal, and I actually think I play cards quite quickly in deals. I know you've sat in the rooms when I'm chatting to them.
For
I
sure.
think I'm quite open and honest, and I will tell people straight away, this is what we're looking to do, this is what we've got to spend. I'm happy to do the deal if this is how it will work. This is where we're trying to get to. With your help, we'll get there. Are you in? Like, we want them on the journey. We want them as part of it, because I think what happens in other deals I've been to, everyone just sits on the fence. No one says anything, and actually you walk away with no one making the first move. And I feel that that's also needs to happen in a deal. Someone needs to say, this is where we want to go. Do you
Yeah.
want to do it? And if they say, no, absolutely not, we've got no interest in that, well, then that's obviously not that's never going to work. You're not going to be able to
Yeah.
change them on that.
It's interesting to see that dynamic play out in any process that I've been involved in. And there are some times where both parties, say as it is, they're quite open and transparent and direct in what they're looking for, and other times there is a little bit of posturing and moving around and kind of not wanting to show your cards too much, just in case you can get more out of the deal than what you were hoping for. And I guess that's why sometimes it's quite useful to have someone like myself or another individual in the middle, so you've got that third party. You can have that conversation alone and privately, and then be the conduit in between both parties. That sometimes removes that dynamic. But I just wanted to stick with the team for a minute. So, yes, loads of meetings with the partners, loads of meetings with the owners of the businesses, the directors, for example. That's all well and good. But obviously, if anybody is looking at a sale, there's always that sensitivity and worry around the team. But
Yeah.
you can't really get a feel for the culture or the team without being amongst them. So, in your experience, how have you managed to get a feel for the team?
So we would normally try and meet the key team members. So again, and we've had deals in the past, lots of deals which haven't happened. So I'm always looking for these deals. gets a bit addictive, I guess, is the answer. But I've had lots of meetings in the past where I've said, "Oh, can I go out with your senior management team? Do you all want to go out for dinner or whatever it is, or lunch?" And they say, "No, you can't." And I'm like, "Why?" And they say, "Well, they don't know about it, or they don't." And to me, again,
Yeah.
that's a bit of a red flag, because I think, well, as a buyer, I think that's a red flag, because I'm quite open with my team. My team know where we want to go, or I think they know where we want to go. We talk about it. I would say, an open firm. So to me, when someone's saying I don't want my team to know, that instantly makes me think, well, maybe that's not the team that works the same way as ours, if that makes
That's
sense.
an interesting point of view. And what stage would you ask that question to see would it be after, say, you've got the deal agreed verbally as such?
I think you'd loosely have the deal agreed. You think you'd
Yeah.
loosely have the deal agreed, and you'd know that you're going somewhere. No one's going to want to show you their team before they know that you're semi-serious, and you know they're semi-serious.
Yeah.
But we've been out, in other deals we've done, we've been out with the sort of managers or whoever it is, a couple of people from their team. And again, I take a couple of people from my team. So the whole idea of this is the fact that everyone is saying the same things. I mean, we have a bigger meeting there where we would chat about where we want to go. We just have a general chit chat as well, which obviously you can learn a lot from general chit chat.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because your approach there is quite direct in terms of saying, like, I want to just, let's go out for a drink or a meal or whatever it may well be, a lunch. There's been plenty of times where we've kind of done a bit of a James Bond kind of moment where we've got the acquirer coming in and they're going to the office, and they might go there under the guise of, I don't know, they might be R&D specialists, and the firm they're
Yeah.
looking to buy doesn't do R&D, so they might arrive to say that they're there for R&D, and then they're allowed to then speak to the team, because then they can talk about the R&D service that they offer, and then that just gives them a little insight. And there's been various other guises that we've known, partners or directors of the acquirers, to go in just to get a feel and at least sight of the team before they make that acquisition.
We had one before that basically they whisked me in on a Sunday to see the office. So met them and went over there on a Sunday. Saw the office. Office was great, all good. And then basically said, can we meet your team? And they're like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I said, well, when can we meet your team? They're like, the day the money's paid, you can come in. And I'm like, but I can't see how on that day I'll turn up on Monday morning and they go, by the way, I've just sold the business. This is your new boss. See you later. Like, how's
Yeah.
that ever going to work well from a team integrator? In my opinion, that's just never going to work. I appreciate it happens with bigger firms, but I can't see how it works with a team of 10 or 15 where
A more closely knit firm. Yeah.
posting it, I just can't see how they're going to. And I think your team are very nervous around these deals, and rightly so. Really, they're very nervous. They think their jobs are potentially up for grabs. They think that there's people that are going to come in and take their places. And to me, that's never been in my intention in any of the deals we've done. It's always been, this is great. We're getting more, hopefully, great people to work with. We're expanding our knowledge base. We're going to be able to expand our service offerings. We've got more capacity. So to me, there's a lot of good things that are going to come out of it. But I appreciate from the employee's point of view, they're probably sitting there thinking, I don't know this person. What's their
Absolutely.
intentions? What's their plans? And I feel like if you can communicate it with the key players as early as possible in that team, even if it's just then at that point, the manager says, well, actually, I've met with him. He's a lovely bloke. I've met his team.
Precisely.
What
Absolutely.
he wants
Yeah.
to do. Just reassures everyone. It stops people putting their CV out and you buying something with half the team there you weren't expecting, if you know what I mean.
So I think there's two things to that conversation. There's just sticking with that point about, going out lunches and have, at least with the key players and managers, so that they know you. So when their team are asking the questions, they can give their honest opinion as well. So we always find, if you can't get that opportunity before the acquisition of meeting the wider team, and this might be more relevant to larger deals, then at least get in there, day one, day two after completion, get in front of the staff, make them feel comfortable, let them know that their jobs are safe, everything's going to continue as is. Consistency and continuity is key, and they're of real value to the success of the business going forward as well, just to put everyone's minds at rest, for sure. But secondly, I think the point I'm trying to make in some of the acquisitions that you've made, they've really been retiring partners, right? So most of them are going to be at a certain age. The staff aren't silly. They're aware that the guys are in their 60s and approaching retirement. So I always find, when speaking to partners at that sort of age and time of their career, that, yes, I understand the sensitivity around it and not wanting to let them know. But they must know in 2 years' time or a year's time, you'll be thinking about selling. So actually, it's in your best interest to find someone that you can trust and you're going to sell the business to. Get them early enough, because you might start losing staff, and you start losing staff, you start losing your clients. When you start losing your clients, you don't have an asset to sell. I've seen that many times where I've spoken to a sole practitioner or a two-partner firm over the course of 2 or 3 years, and they've held off, and then their staff have just got a little bit nervous. How long are we going to be around for? Am I going to be out of a job? And one by one, they've left because they didn't know the direction of travel going forward.
That makes sense. I think that keeping the team is the key important thing in all of it, really, because I appreciate you buying an accountancy database, but for me, the database is worth so much. The team and normally the address are the thing that's actually worth an awful lot of money to me.
Yeah. And just sticking with the team for the last final question there is, you mentioned about, at lunchtime or whatever it is, when you meet up pre-deal, you might bring a couple more of your team members so they can mix. Post acquisition, how do you integrate the teams? Do you arrange socials, or do you force the teams to work with each other on certain assignments, etc.?
So obviously we try and have a meet up after the completion. So in all the ones we've done, we've had drinks, or we've had a Friday night drinks or something where we've all met up. They still are quite awkward, I think, especially if you're running from separate sites. So one of the things that we've done in the past, we've got different offices. You've already got a natural segregation anyway. And it's kind of a bit like a wedding where the bride's family sit one side, the groom sit the other, and on the dance floor. And it's pretty awkward because the key players are jumping over both sides, like the bride and groom, trying to talk to everyone. It's a bit awkward. If this next one comes off, the plan is that we're going to do actual team building event, because I think the drinks, it's too easy to sit separate, and they do work, but they're, in my opinion, it takes 6 months or so to integrate properly and get everyone chatting and knowing who everyone is. I feel like if this one comes off, we're going to do a team event where it's almost a day, and it will probably be something stupid like wakeboarding, or it will be, like an action thing on something or other.
You're forced to communicate, you're forced to interact.
We're forced, stuck, and we're going to have to all make friends, and then hopefully we'll keep up with whatever it is, quarterly team meetups. Or again, this is going to be quite segregated office just because of geographic locations, but I want us to be working as one. I mean, we all work off centralised telephone systems, centralised account systems, centralised everything. So we do need to know who, Stephen or Rachel or whatever it is in wherever it is, who they are, because otherwise we won't be able to put the calls through to them. So we do need to know.
Yeah. Well, that's a lovely segue into my next question, actually, about systems and processes and back office and what you're using. How do you approach that integration post acquisition? Are you, let's not rock the ship, let's keep it steady for a few weeks and then slowly piecemeal start introducing your centralized pieces, or is it day one?
I think too slowly is probably the answer to what we've done in the past. We've probably been too kind. We've been too slow to do it. Again, I think that when you change everything on day one, or you change everything straight away, you're going to get the backs up of the people who you're buying effectively, and you're going to get the backs up of the people who are working there. No one really likes change, and the thing that you got to think is accountants really don't like change. It's just something that accountants don't like. Accountants are taught to think in the past; they're not taught to think about the future. So, to me, if you try and change something, you are going to get their backs up. So, I think in the past we probably acted too slowly. Typically, probably 6 months, 7 months post acquisition, we'd look to start changing things. And again, quite a slow process where probably within a year or a year and a half, we've sort of changed it all over.
Right.
I think also you need to buy people's trust, in my opinion, that these changes are good, because it's all great you saying this software is better than your software. It's still a new software they've got to learn. It's still a new process they've got to learn. So to me, I think we've got to the stage now where if we suggested things, most of the team would say, yeah, I believe that will be good. But that's taken a long time to get to that point.
Yeah, and they're all team that have been working with you and know you. They're not fresh. They're not someone that's just been acquired.
They're not fresh. And the second we get another one, it's going to be the newer acquisitions we're doing. We are trying to line the systems up better, because again, that's hard. If you we're quite paperless. We're quite a paperless office. We're probably quite modern, I would say. Sorry, I was going to say we're quite paperless and we're quite modern in our approach where we are. But I
Right.
feel like some of the firms we've bought, they're probably more archaic accountancy firms. So again, if you go in there and say we're scanning all your files and we're throwing them in the shredding bin, that is not going to do anyone any favors.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
obviously, people
Yeah.
can see the benefits of it over time.
Yeah, and of course, as you mentioned and alluded to, there's still training on different systems as well that needs to happen. So to do all that day one and let people not have the training and try and force that in quickly is just not going to work. And that post acquisition, those first few weeks and months are crucial, really, in making sure the clients stay where they are, the team is happy. Yeah, it's just a happy ship, really, I guess. So, no, interesting from that point of view. And what's your opinion on, or your position on branding as well? What have you done in the past?
Yeah, we probably haven't. So three of them went straight over to our branding. Wasn't as bad. We were taking the senior partners with us for a long term journey. So probably wasn't as bad doing that because it meant that they could speak to their clients directly. They weren't huge client bases either. These are sort of a couple of 100,000 fees. So
Right.
again, they could reach out to all their clients, explain what was going on. We were very clear on the communication that they thought this was of benefit. We thought this was of benefit. They were getting better skills and support and other things to help their clients. And I think clients, as long as they know that the support and skills is going to be better and the fee is going to stay the same or around the same, they're going to support the transition. So on them, we branded straight away. The one that we bought in July, we haven't co-branded yet. We're talking about it now. So we're a year, well, just over a year, aren't we? 15 months, and we're now talking about co-branding. And the problem on that one was that is a direct competitor of ours, or it was a direct competitor geographically. And we're probably more expensive than they are. We're a bigger firm, so we're probably more expensive than what they are. So some of
Okay.
the people that have gone there, we would have quoted in the past. So co-branding it off the bat would have been tricky. The plan is to build a group co-brand on all of them, which we're looking at doing, and hopefully we'll get done by Christmas.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's two trains of thoughts, isn't there? Just to have the branding as, say, Pocknells, for example, or have that co-branding, because there will be in certain circumstances goodwill, especially in
Yeah.
the geographical locations. The goodwill is going to be there. They're going to be known within the town, so it's a case of just tapping into that. But as you said, the important thing on that client retention piece is letting the clients know that actually there's a greater suite of services here, so we'll be able to better serve you, or better service you. So having that link to Pocknells, knowing that greater umbrella there is of great help as well. And that again leads quite nicely into that client retention piece. So we've talked about, making sure there's not too much change in the branding, maybe not too much change in the processes and the way things happen straight away. You alluded to the fact slightly about fees as well, but what's your playbook? What's your 101 on making sure that client retention is higher? I think you've been quite successful with that in the past.
A lot of the deals we've done have been on an earn out basis though. So in
Hmm.
the past, a lot of our deals have been on an earn out basis, which I feel makes client retention a lot better because all of a sudden all parties need to keep those clients. Like we said earlier, we are a growth practice. We have got good sales systems, sales funnels, and advertising. So what our play would always be is sell us your client base, we'll grow it, and we'll pay you 25% for the next 4 years or whatever it is, which for smaller practices has always worked well. But again, we've aligned the goal. So at the start, we've said to those partners, this is what the goal is. We want to grow your client base. We want to retain them. We want to grow it so that you earn more money and we earn more money effectively. So I think retention has never really been a problem because we've always kept the partners incentivized to help us achieve that, if that makes sense. And I mean, obviously, you've got to give a good service as well, haven't you? I mean, there's obviously that part to it. You've got to be offering the service to the clients, otherwise they will leave. I think all the
So
ones.
aligning the interests of the partner and yourselves as the acquirer is number one in keeping the clients happy. Fees, how do you handle fees? Do you keep them the same for a while? And
Keep them the same. I mean, yeah, keep them the same. Effectively, we would review them. Obviously, if there's reasons to increase, we would, but effectively they would be left the same as what they were. I mean,
mm,
most of the ones we've bought, the partners have stayed on for a year or two anyway, so we've let them run the business as their own, just under our guideship, if you like. So we've just
got
helped
you.
them.
Yeah.
So let them run it as their own. We've tried to put our key staff in or a member of our key team in to pick up the role of the partner or director. And then obviously we've taken a lot of the back end work away from them and centralised it here,
Hmm.
which means that they don't need an admin department anymore. If they've got an admin department, they can push it onto someone else. Push their work onto something else. So that's how we've sort of done it, which has worked quite well.
Well, I imagine in your plans though, it would be to bring those fees over time on par with Pocknell's and your level there. So again, pre-acquisition, I guess that would be something you're looking at to make sure that the fees are at least in a similar ballpark, and if not, that you've had that conversation with the practice owner. Often, as we know, sole practitioners or two-partner firms, it's having that confidence to get the fees to where they should be, because sometimes they've had clients for so long and they've just kept them there on legacy type fees and haven't had the heart to push them up because they've not had the confidence to raise the fees. So for someone else to come in, we've got a greater suite of services that gives the owners sometimes the confidence to increase the fees or have that conversation with their clients.
So we have a centralized quoting system, which effectively everyone has access to, everyone can see. So, for example, the one we just bought, they are quoting off our system now for new clients, which again, it doesn't solve the old fees, but I mean, over time they'll be solved. But it does stop the problem going forward, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
that is kind of one of the things we look at.
So we've got that aligning the interest of the partners and the acquirer, fees, obviously branding. You've already kind of covered, where you said you'll do that on a commercial basis, and then the team that's looking after those clients is hugely
You've got to keep
hugely
them,
important.
yeah, very important to keep them
Yeah.
happy as well in the deal and to make
And
them aware of where you're going.
And do you set about a schedule of getting out there, meeting the client, or your team meeting the clients as well? I appreciate what you've done is, that the partners will be there for a while before they retire, but you must want to get your guys in front of the clients as well to have that Pocknell's interaction, or not?
Not too much. I mean, obviously, like I say, we put a key member that we trust into that practice that will then
Hmm.
report back if they feel that the systems aren't, or it's not being operated the way that we would expect it to be operated. But getting directly in front of the clients, to be fair, if the team are doing a great job, why do we need to be directly in front of them? I mean, no one really knows it's Pocknells. People don't really care if it's Pocknells or AJ Chambers or whatever the name of the firm is. They just want great service from whoever their accountant is, don't they?
Yeah.
So as long as the accountant's doing the great service, they're doing it correctly. I don't see why we need to be put in front of them as such. I just want to make sure that they're not doing anything wrong, they're not exposing us in any way, and that we're working collaboratively really on what we're doing. It's all
Yeah.
working the same.
Yeah, I guess the only time you need to make sure where that happens is when that retiring partner does reach the end of their earn-out period and they're leaving, that those relationships are either gone to another member of their team that were already in situ, or, as you said, someone that you've put in there from Pocknells as well.
Yeah, that is true. But the thing I would say as well is, so bearing in mind a lot of the firms that we've taken over in the past are fairly small. The second they move to us, where we centralise the payroll, we centralise the VAT, we centralise the bookkeeping, all of a sudden that relationship changes. So over time, that client isn't just talking to Steve, the partner. He's now
Yeah.
talking to, Rachel in payroll and Debbie in bookkeeping and, Dan in the VAT returns or whatever it is. They're talking to these different people. And once you start chatting to the other people, they forget about the partner, which is really sad as a partner to realise this. But they say, well, actually, Dan's really good. I just want to speak to Dan all the time. So they just reach out to Dan instead of the partner, and then he takes it over. So I feel like that's kind of how it naturally happens. The partners sort of slowly slide away because there's people that they're talking to in that team already, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense, and I've seen that so many times. So thanks for sharing that, John, because that's super important part, I think. And it's natural, right? It's human. They've been your clients for so long. You feel that they will only work with you. And what I find is exactly that: retiring partners over the course of the transition period actually realise, oh, I am replaceable, or I haven't got that much of a tie with the client as I thought I did. In a way of, I don't need to be dealing with them all the time. There's greater teams there, but the client may well still want to know that they can pick up the phone to their friend or their accountant that they've spoken to over the last 20 or so years, or whatever it may well be. So no, that's a really, really important point there. So thanks for that, John. Which again is nice to kind of move on to the partners and the retiring partners. I know this may got some chuckles, because I also know that in sometimes with the retiring partner still being around for a couple of years, it can be tricky, especially if you are making these changes whilst they're there. There's a new way of working. So it is important that they, I guess, have some joined up thinking with you and are aligned on that when you first initially have the conversation before any acquisitions take place. But even still, there's a difference between thinking it sounds okay to then all of a sudden, day one, day two, things just slightly changing around them that was their baby beforehand. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
That's tricky because a lot of them are still partners, so I don't want to upsetting them too much. There's definitely challenges, isn't there? There's always going to be challenges on this. I mean, someone's spent their whole life building their baby, and then some, chap comes in and says, "Let's do it this way because it's better or because it will work." Of course, that's going to cause offence, and of course, that's going to cause pushback, and rightly so. So I think the way that we try and do it, and I don't think we're perfect at it, is I think, again, it is all just communication and lots of communication. We'd normally raise it in board meetings, so we try and have a monthly board meeting every month with all of them. We've separate as well, so separate board meetings with different firms.
Got you.
And we would just keep raising it. So we'd keep saying, we need to look at the document management system. We need to look at the document management system. We need to look at the document management system. And by the time you've said it 4 or 5 times, eventually it's like, well, that's going to happen. And then we're going to change the document, change the system. And we just slowly feed it through. Of course, there is definitely pushbacks. And people say, why change it? Why do this? Why, I totally get it. But the reality is they're only there for X number of years. I've got to look at for the next 20 years or the next 30 years or the next whatever it is. I have to look at that side. So the fact that AI isn't important to these guys that are going to leave in the next 2 years, it's got to be important to us because unfortunately we're not going to go in 2 years. So we need to buy a system that's going to be integrated with this and it's going to help us on this. And the rest of my team need that because otherwise they're going to say, why are we working so hard when that company down the road aren't working as hard? So unfortunately, those decisions need to be made, and I think that's my job and my management team's job, as that's the job they have, isn't it? Effectively, to make those tough decisions and to deal with it. I don't think we've ever had a proper partner fallout ever, and I don't ever want one because I wouldn't enjoy that at all. I do love everyone I work with. I think they're great. I wouldn't want to fall out of them. So
I think the fact that you've still got many still around. I mean, I know from our conversations that you've even had some that have outstayed their earn-out period as such because they're either re-energized, enjoy working within Pocknells, and that's a good relationship.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot that, I mean, you've got to bear in mind as well, these people are coming with loads of experience. They are an asset for you to have on board as well. They're not a hindrance, like the amount of times I ring them up and I say, have you ever done this before? They say, yeah, this is how you do it. That's brilliant. To have that at your fingertips is brilliant. So I wouldn't want to upset them and lose them and everything else. So to me, you've got to work with them on it. But I think the post partners are tricky, or they're not tricky, but there are challenges that come with it. I think at the same time, they understand, they want the best for their team. They are willing to accept it. And it might be a case of you say to them, look, we're going to do this, but you don't need to do this. You don't need to be part of this. You carry on as you are for the next 2 years, but we're going to make the rest of your team do this. This is how we're going to do it. And most people will accept that and they'll understand why.
Yeah, I guess the value for you as well, where you've made different acquisitions and you've got the different offices, that you can almost, when you're talking about, I don't know, we're going to start digitizing this. This is our file system, recording system. If you've had a test bed that's gone well, you can say, look, well, that office has done it and it's working really well, and they can have a conversation and see it in real time. And obviously that value comes with acquisitions rather than just telling them.
And multiple offices. I mean, when we integrated our phones, we jumped phone providers and we put it in one office. And we all said, let's see how this goes. And then it went well. So we rolled it out across the next office. And again, when people were saying, why are we changing these phones? Or why are we, that's such a petty thing, but it still causes pushback on reasons that people don't like the new handsets or they don't want to wear one of those, whatever you're wearing now.
Yeah.
It just pushed back. And I feel like that, again, when people in the team are saying, it's actually pretty good, it's good because it does X, Y, Z, all of a sudden it gets it going. So, yeah, I think communication is key to any of this, and honesty as well. I think that's got, I keep saying that, but to me, that is the part that has to be there. Otherwise...
and you're never going to please everyone, are you? You kind of, as you said, as long as the communication's there and you've got most to buy in, or as you said, you're transparent and can be very clear on the reasons why you're making these decisions.
I also think, and this is my thing in life really, is like pick your battles as well. Like sometimes I find that we get stuck at like loggerheads in a meeting, and some of my management team are definitely slightly stronger on their, we're not backing down on this. And I just think, look, this is one we don't need to win. Like let it go, and we'll win the next one that we do need to win. And I think
Yeah.
it's just a case of, I wouldn't want to run a dictatorship where we're saying, look, we're doing it this way, we're doing this, we're doing that. That's not how I would want to work. I'd rather say, these are our 3 suggestions. This one I'm not backing down on, but these 2 you've got a bit of say in, and try and sort of diplomatically push through the changes, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
obviously
no,
hope.
absolutely. I think what's loud and clear, John, is that you're quite sympathetic to the position that the retiring partners find themselves in as well. So you can kind of get it from their perspective, but also trying to let them know from your perspective and meet somewhere in the middle. And if you're coming from that angle, that conversation is going to be a lot easier because you can actually, as I said, sympathise with them. So no, okay, fantastic. Appreciate your insight there. I guess I'd love to understand now some of the real challenges you mentioned. Obviously, your first buy-in when you was younger, and then your first acquisition didn't go quite well. But yeah, what real life examples can you share with us that you've learned from, but they were real challenges at the time?
Well, the first one, let's say, it was a firm I worked at. It didn't make any money, and I think when I bought in, they said that I would get paid £500 a week, and which was a lot of money. There's a lot of drawings to have as a part, and then at the end of the month, they said, "Oh, you got to put £1,000 back in to top up the wages," as that's what partners do. And then I worked out I was actually like not much better off than I was on my wage, and had a lot more stress. So it didn't. Yeah, that was a challenge. Probably the best thing that ever happened was that, though, in a lot of ways, because I think that taught me the value of making profit, which I know sounds totally bonkers, but I feel that was the point where I was like, I can't carry on working like this. If I'm going to do anything, we need to focus on profit and not focus on how many staff we've got or how much turnover we've got, or it's got to be profitable work. And I think that's kind of really been the basis of everything we've done since then, because we remember what it was like when we didn't have any profit and we didn't have any money, and that wasn't the place I ever want to go back to. So I think that was a definite challenge, but a lot of good came out of that. I think some of the other challenges, what are the other challenges that we've had? It's probably been lots. I mean, one of the challenges of multiple offices, you end up with lots of different offices, and keeping your team happy through multiple offices is tricky, really tricky, especially when you're asking team to work from different offices, especially if you've got a very nice office and some of them aren't as nice, or some of them haven't got aircon in every room. And that's definitely a challenge, and one that
Do
I
your
hope
team move around, or do they stay situated in the same office?
move. They move,
Yeah.
which part of that is because we want to integrate the teams. A part of that is that we want to get people chatting to other people in the team. We want the integration between everyone. Another part of it is just purely manning offices, and it gets you to see different clients. So yeah, I mean that's definitely a challenge that's causing more and more problems the more we buy. But yeah, that's been a challenge. I don't think we've really had any direct challenges with any of the other acquisitions as such. I mean, obviously there's been parts where there's been disagreements on things, but typically, silly things like bad debts or something like that. They're normally always money orientated, the disagreements. So it's normally got some sort of financial impact on one party, and that's normally where the disagreement comes. It's not normally because you're integrating a new telephone system, for example. That isn't really something that causes a disagreement. It's just a bit of unhappiness.
What about that second acquisition you mentioned, where unfortunately the person passed away, so you took that on?
Yeah.
I'm guessing that was a challenge because there wasn't really that person with the relationships. You're just picking up these clients cold and trying to do what was best at the time.
Yeah, that was hard. I mean, we didn't have the records. We didn't have the clients didn't really have the records. Obviously, the family were grieving. They didn't really want to, understandably, they weren't in a position to help a lot. That was a tricky one. I would be very reluctant to do that again. I suspect if it happened, I'd have to do it. So it's kind of one of those that probably haven't really learnt my lesson on. but we'd have to do it. To be fair, in the end, a challenge is only a challenge for, 10 days or so, and then you've solved it, haven't you, really? So it's kind of I don't know, it's only a problem, isn't it? I think once you've solved
Great
it,
way to.
move on and go again. So I feel like the thing I'm really lucky, which is really fortunate, and I don't know why, I'm so forgetful, which is mad. Like I can forget everything that's happened that was bad. Like in the moment, it's awful. We get it solved, and then I'm forgotten about it, and we just go on to the next part, which I think is quite handy because it allows you to do a lot. Because then you don't really stay in that moment for too long, if that makes sense.
Yeah, as long as you're taking the
Um,
lessons with you forward, then yeah, but don't get hung up in that bad state because that's just negativity, right? And you don't want negativity moving forward.
no, I'm really lucky. I've got a really good team that sort of remember a lot of the challenges that I can't remember. And then when we sit there and I say, "Let's go and do this," they say, "Well, do you remember X?" And I'm like, "Oh no, we shouldn't
Yeah.
do that." And they sort of help me. So I'm really lucky to have built a good team around me.
So rather than concentrate on the negatives, concentrate on the positives. Have there been times where you've gone along your acquisitions and noticed that there's certain things that the party you were buying do really, really well, and you've decided that, do you know what, I'm going to adopt that and take that right across Pocknells going forward?
I think there's probably been loads of those. I mean, the company we bought recently had a really, really good payroll team. I mean, we've got a good payroll team. Our payroll team, the main lady was getting slightly older. She's my mum, actually, so I probably can't say that. She's getting a bit older now. And obviously the new payroll team coming in, that was like an absolute blessing. They're an amazing payroll team. So to get them in with our team and to get a proper payroll manager out of there was an amazing thing. We've had the acquisition we're looking at the moment, their systems are far better than ours. So again, when I'm looking at it, we're using the same software, but they're using it to a state that we're not. And to be fair, again, open and honest, in the meeting, we said to them, "What you're doing here is so much better than us." And they said, "Well, do you want us to show you how to do it?" So they're equal, when you're saying, "How do you know you're well aligned?" They're being open about it as well and saying, "Look, we'll show you how we do this." And I think I'm really excited, and I really hope that acquisition happens because I feel like we're gonna take so much from that acquisition, from taking what they're doing and bring it over here. I know we're going to give a lot as well because I know there's parts in their systems where they're weak, and we're saying we can help you. We know how to do that part. So
Yeah.
I think in all these things, I don't want to go into it saying our way's the best way. Like we said earlier, I don't want to go and say our way's the best way. Do it our way. I want to sit there, look and see what they're doing. Say, is this better? Is it not better? And work accordingly. I mean, we used a certain payroll software because of the one that we acquired. We were using another software, and we moved to this payroll software, which actually has cost us a lot more money. But you can see that from a scaling it point of view, it's so much better than where we were. And so it's not always a case of that upset my payroll team a little bit. But anyway, that's a different conversation. But that
But
upset them.
that's the conversation with your mum, though.
That was, yeah, mum, poor old
Yeah.
mum, she was very happy. Problem is, she's the only person who really tells me off, and actually, I think I don't know what I'm going to do now. I'm the boss, but she's my mum. So, yeah.
Is there, away from systems and processes and teams, is there been anything from a employee benefits kind of setup or offering that you've gone, I really like that, or that you've added to your own as you've acquired, or?
Not massively, because the ones we bought are typically smaller, so they're all sort
Yeah.
of doing minimum. We've sort of added extra holiday and things to people that we've acquired, and we've added some
Yeah.
other benefits. So, which again, I think is a lovely thing when you turn up and you say, "By the way, guys, this is what your new contract says. This is how it works, and you've got some extra holiday, and you've got
Mm.
paid overtime, or you've got this, or whatever it is." As an employee, instantly, I think you think, "Well, this is good," and you can't
Oh,
think that's bad, can
absolutely.
you?
No.
So I think that gets you a few brownie points when you first turn up. So yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I think 9 times out of 10, it tends to be if it's a slightly larger firm acquiring, they're gonna have a better employee benefit setup, or allow a bit more flexibility maybe as well. So, and that's a good way to get that goodwill from that team straight away.
we're massively flexible, which is probably a great thing about working here. It's not a great thing about managing here, but it's a great thing about working here. We are massively flexible. We're very flexible on the hours. We're very flexible on the childcare. We're very flexible on all of these parts, and all the teams seem to respect that and work in that way. But of course, when we're going to these smaller firms, which are more rigid and also far more reliant because they haven't got the number of people to pick up the work when
Absolutely.
someone's not there in crucial time, that causes problems. So again, I think people are enjoying that. I think people can see the benefit to that part.
Yeah, and maybe there's being part of a larger team, or firm, there is more opportunity potentially as well for someone progression wise within their career. They can veer off into another area, whereas if you're part of a one partner firm or a two partner firm, you're stuck in your role. There's not too much room to maneuver or go. Yeah, okay, you might have a bit more of a general overview and exposure to loads of different things, but at least with a larger firm, you might have more opportunity from a career point of view.
And I think the other thing that we've got out of it, which is really, really good, is some great partners as well. So, like I say, there's lots of retiring partners who no longer, my original business partner, I'll often ring him up for advice on things. I'll often speak to him about things. Like, you get some great people as well, and that is important, I think, along the lines.
Brilliant. Well, look, before we do wrap up, just given all of the conversation that we've just had, it would be great if you could name your top two things that anybody that's listening to this right now or thinking about acquiring should be thinking about to get prepared pre-acquisition for post-acquisition processes. So yeah, what two things would you say they really need to be looking out for so they can avoid any pitfalls going forward?
I think if you're keeping the partners on, or you're keeping the existing owners on, you have to get on with them. I can't see how you can do a deal if you don't get on with the people. And I feel like if at any point in that starting point you're not getting on with them, or you don't trust them, or you don't, that should be a deal. That would definitely be a deal breaker for me. I'd think, why am I doing this? I appreciate if you're just buying it and they're gone, then maybe that's not the case. But I would not want to do a deal with someone I didn't trust and I didn't get on with, because you spend more time with them than you do anyone else in your family or anyone else, and you invest a lot of time into those people. You want to love them and work with them, don't you, effectively? So that to me is definitely important. I think the other thing I would say is probably try and get on with it. I feel that the other thing that happens in deals quite often is we have all these nervous bits where it slows down a deal. And I think that for me, most things can be worked out if you just get on with it. I think that's probably what my other tip would be from an acquisition point of view. Momentum's key, because I think that kills a lot of deals. When it slows down, it just slows everything down, doesn't it? And then I guess there's a third one, which Nate didn't ask for. It's just got to be open.
Always like a bonus point.
Bonus point. Open and transparent and communicate it to all. That would definitely be the final one, because I feel that's got to be the thing that keeps you going.
And I think that final one really lends itself both like pre-acquisition, the run up to it, open, transparent, communicate, but then afters as well, as you said, for all the reasons, with the partners, with the team, with the staff, just letting them have the vision. And I think it was really interesting. You said that all of your team, you're very transparent with. They all know what the objectives are of the business. They all know in what direction you're all pulling out. So you've got that camaraderie, I guess, as a team. So no, John, really, really appreciate your time. Thanks for that and sharing your insights. It's always great to dive into these subjects a little bit more, because no one really gets to talk about it. So there's people out there that haven't done acquisitions before and they're afraid to ask the questions, or maybe haven't thought about certain things. And as I said right at the top of this episode, usually everyone talks about the pre-acquisition stuff and looking at all of that, rather than looking at how you integrate things and the challenges you may come across once the acquisition is done and how to make a success of it. So no, been really great to chat to you, John, and yeah, hopefully we can do a couple more deals with each other as well going forward.
I hope so. It will be good.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, John.